Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So nice meeting you all. I'm very excited to be here. Today I'm going to be talking about new technologies in human genomics. And of course, we are going to talk about CRISPR, gene editing, but keep an eye because I will be also mentioning artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency. So please be aware that this terminology is coming. And we are going to be thinking about how all this technology can be related to the biological weapon convention because of their positive use, but also for their potential for misuse. So for this presentation, I have three simple aims for you. The first one is that you familiarize yourself with the terminology. The second one is to wonder a little bit about what's your role as a citizen, as a scientist, or as someone driving policies or business around this type of technologies, especially more specifically in human genomics. And the third aim that I will mention it again at the end of the presentation is to decide what is going to be your role as a citizen, as a parent, scientist, head of unit, volunteer, etc. You got this, don't worry. So of course, I'm going to be talking about what is DNA. I'm assuming that you all know, but they are like the blocks of life, what makes animals, plants, etc. And you must be already quite familiarized with that. And of course, what the question that I want to do to you now is to think for just a minute, what would you do if you have the DNA of your family? Would you treasure it? Would you use it to compare how similar you are to your brother, to your favorite auntie, etc.? I don't know. Everyone has their own answers. Now think, what would you do if you have the DNA of your colleagues? Would you be comparing your DNA maybe to your boss? Would you be maybe not doing these comparisons? Just think a little bit. Just use your imagination to think, what could you be able to do if you have this information? And now think, what could you do where if you have the DNA of all the citizens in your country? If I have the DNA of everyone in Peru, maybe I will be conducting some research, some experiments to see how alike we are, or I don't know, now that we have the COVID-19, how would we are gonna respond to certain vaccines, etc. So I leave it to you to think about that on your own time and place. The next question that I would like to do is, what would you think that companies will do if they have your DNA, the DNA of your family? Will the answers be different? Do you think they will be similar? Will you be okay with companies having the DNA of all your family? What about if companies will have the DNA of all their employees in their own institutions or organizations? Do you think that it will be something nice, that we could maybe have better health programs that the company can provide us? I don't know. These are just some ideas that come to my mind. And what if the company could have DNA access to the information of the DNA of all the citizens in your city or in your country, right? So I leave you to think about those questions for a second while I introduce you to some businesses and what's happening right now in terms of the businesses around human genomics. So this is a map that shows some of the companies that are working in this field. And it's a study that we did in 2018 with some colleagues. And in this report, what we find out is that by 2022, the genomics business is expected to grow to 24 billion US dollars. Of course, the main consumers of this type of equipment, research, reagents are academia, universities, and basically the ones working on health. But nowadays, we have seen in the recent years that we have new targets. So we have new consumers of this type of technology, and that will be startups, small companies, and even citizens. The general public now have access to this type of biotechnology. And why is that? Because the prices have dropped super, like it has dropped. And so that means that now someone that is at home can buy with $150 a genetic kit for genetic engineering, for example. Or you can gather together with your neighborhood if you want, and then you can buy instruments that you use for conducting biological experiments outside a research facility. And I will show you that in the next slides. So I want to talk a little bit about these human genomic businesses. I have different categories, so let's go one by one. The first category is the companies that are often gene therapy, or as you may know, gene editing. So what they say is that they produce gene-based medicine that can transform the life of patients with serious disease. And this, we have already seen that, for example, in the US, they have this type of clinics or these services. And something that I wrote in the lower part of the slide is that, for example, this company has a statement that says that they are doing treatment of only somatic cells, which means that they are going to do gene editing in all the cells in your body that are not sperm or eggs, because these two are the ones that can be passed to future generations. So I thought that this was an important statement that you have to keep your eyes on in case that you start researching more about this type of companies, for example. And now I want to bring a special note, because you may remember that in 2018, we had the whole scandal / news about this researcher in China that did actually gene edited embryos. And then those embryos were born, and those are the famous Chinese twin girls. And you may remember that. And if you don't know, you missed that part of the history in science. I just put like 2 pieces of news about that. That was in 2018. That was about the CRISPR baby scandal in China. But then later we have seen in 2019 that there were also some Russian scientists that were planning to do CRISPR edited babies. So that means that all the changes that you do in these embryos is going to be passed on to future generations. And I just want to bring it up because I hope that you are following this news and following different updates in this case. Now we go to a second category of companies, and maybe you have already heard about them because they are the companies that offer direct to consumer genetic testing. So that means that maybe you heard these companies that say, if you send me a saliva sample, I can tell you if you are 30% Mexican, 20% Vietnamese, 10% European, etc. So those are the companies that offer these ancestry DNA tests. But these are not the only ones. Now we have seen that there is a huge variety of companies in this category. For example, some of them offer the services to screen if you have 20 of the most common diseases in the world, or some of them target women, like this one that we see, prenatal screening, that says they have a narrative that says, you are the leader of the house, you are bringing life, wouldn't you like to know if your future baby is going to have any disease? So they have this target audience. And then they have gone a little bit farther, because nowadays you have companies that say that if you send us your DNA sample, we can give you a skincare routine that is tailored to your DNA, or we can give you a nutrition and fitness program that is tailored to your DNA. And then goes a little bit farther, because of course companies have to be more creative on how they do this. And for example, in this case with DNA Fit, they hire Rio Ferdinand, which is like a famous sport person, I think in the UK. And now if you want, you can compare your DNA to the DNA of this famous person, or you can compare it to this like a marathon runner. As you can see, do you have the genes like a marathon runner? So you can check if your genes that are in charge of, I don't know, the production of muscles in your body are similar to the ones that they have, etc. And then it goes even into the territory of entertainment, because if you see in the lower part of the slide, you have this company that says that they can test if you have like superhero DNA, right? And then they probably have like some cognitive capacity genes that they just want to show if you perform better than the average. And I imagine that some people would like to buy this as a birthday present because it's fun, because it's sciencey-like. And then we also have like clothing. As for people that works on DNA and biologies and sequencing, you know that it looks like a barcode sometimes when you read all the different building blocks, A, T, C, G. So now they print it into a fabric, and then you can have your socks tailored to your DNA, and etc. And of course, I mean, if you have all these fields of nutrition, fitness, why not to go into the field of love? And if Tinder is so successful, why not to use genetic matchmaking? And that's what this DNA romance company is offering. You can send your DNA sample, you find your perfect match. And if you already have a match, you have your better half, don't worry, because we have a company that says that if you're having troubles with your current partner, don't worry, send us your DNA and we will find what are the problems or what are the solutions that can bring your relationship to another level. And you can see that in, for example, this company, Instant Chemistry. So let's go to the next category. The next category will be companies that sell equipment or reagents to the do-it-yourself biology community. If you don't know about this community, this is a community that is very interested on science, but they have not followed a career in in biology or chemistry, so they are amateurs. But sometimes they associate with universities in order to do this type of initiatives where they bring teenagers, students from high school to perform experiments, biology-related experiments, and they do it in a fun way. And as you can see here, Amino Labs, they want to teach genetic engineering and make it accessible, fun, and affordable. It's a way to inspire people. But of course, as everything can be used for different reasons, we have also part of this do-it-yourself community that is using these type of things to do experiments on themselves or in their pets. And this is the case of Josiah Seiner. I don't know if I'm saying it right. And he has a YouTube channel where he shows how he has been injecting, for example, CRISPR and doing gene editing on his own muscle cells. And he also has a company online where he sells all these products. And anyone with $150, $300 can buy this. And when I was in the US 1.5 years ago, my taxi driver was part of this community. So when I told him that I was a biologist, he told me that he actually bought one of his kids and he was injecting fluorescent protein to his dog to make the dog fluorescent in the darkness. So this is not something that is too far away, from imagination. And I think that in Netflix, you also have a documentary that talks about the do-it-yourself community. So I'll encourage you to go and look at it as well. Okay, let's go to the fourth category of companies. And these will be the ones that buy and sell genetic data. So remember that all the companies in category 2 are collecting data from clients. So one of the things that has been seen is that, for example, the company 23andMe that is related to ancestry testing has been selling this data to huge pharmaceutical companies. And that, of course, is good in the sense that pharmaceutical companies need more data so they can be more accurate in their results. But on the other hand, you are thinking like, they are selling my genetic data, what is the profit for me, for example, right? That could be one of the questions or many other questions. And sorry? That's random sound. And then, of course, that's something that people has been wondering, and that's how we go into the territory of blockchain and cryptocurrency, because people that is saying, why do you need a middle person to sell your genetic data? You can just come here and sell it directly to anyone that wants it, and we can provide you the platform to do that. And that's how EncryptGene Xenome are providing these services where they give you like a DNA token or a DNA coin that you can use to buy different things in the world of blockchain. Now, we are producing so much genetic data because you have to sequence that, right? You send your saliva samples, everything has to be sequenced, and that needs to be stored somewhere. So now we have also the companies that are providing services to store, all the petabytes of genomic data. And we have the big companies that you already know, Amazon, Google Cloud, Microsoft are providing this type of services to companies, to individuals, etc. And we are seeing now that the small startups or different type of companies are using this in order to provide other services. For example, in this case, 7 Bridges provides a service to hospitals that have to deal with genetic data, and they have to find their patients and maybe do comparisons between DNA sequences. So they do it through them, but 7 Bridges use the platform, the cloud of one of these companies to do that. And then we go to the 7th category, that is when we are merging these type of technologies with artificial intelligence. And as you can see here, there are different types of narratives that they use to show this. For example, Deep Genomics says that because biology is too complex for humans to understand, let's use artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence for drug discovery. We design new molecules for the hardest targets. IBM Watson, cognitive computing leverage big data to shorten the time to identify new drugs and repurpose current drugs. So this is something that I also see very closely because my partner works in a pharmaceutical and he uses a lot of AI in order to, in neural circuits, to train the software in order to conduct different type of research that helps them to, as they say, to consume less time in order to find all these new medicine. And synthetic biology, you must have heard. Synthetic biology is a field that applies engineering, design, and computer science principles to biology, usually at the DNA level. And in 2018, 98 companies only raised $3.8 billion for this research, and governments are also investing in this type of technology to see how they can use it in order to be competitive or to increase their research. And as you can see here in these companies, we have better medicine in our synthetic DNA. Any DNA that you want, you just send it there and then they will make it for you. And these are other type of technologies. So I'm finishing now, so don't worry. So I wonder what's in your mind right now with all these like different type of information and technology merging together. So for what I get from people that have done this presentation before is some people wonder if what happens if health insurers get access to their DNA data, who owns the genetic data, who's auditing this business, what if DNA companies are hacked and then your information is just somewhere for the best buyer? Do governments control the do-it-yourself biology? If we put more policy restrictions, does that mean that we are going to impair the businesses and we are going to have less businesses? Is there professional genetic counseling for all the people that is just giving away their DNA? But I want to remind you that all this technology has a lot of potential. It has already demonstrated like really good impact. We can develop medicine faster. We can use less animals at laboratories because with AI, we can reduce library of compounds of 50,000 to perhaps 1,000 and then just 100 go into experimentation, for example. We can find murderers. There was a very famous serial killer in the 80s, and it was found just some years ago because his relatives uploaded the DNA data for this type of ancestry exams, and then that's how they found him. And you can accurately diagnose if you know one of your offspring is gonna develop a disease, so you can prevent it or be ready for it. We can get rid of pests in agriculture, and we can even create with synthetic biology, for example, better ways for bioremediation of our rivers that are polluted. So don't think that everything is bad. There is potential for good, but the great part is like, how do we monitor? How do we control? Do we need to do something else? And that's my last question for you. So now that I talk about different types of technologies and how they merge with each other, do you think that any of these technologies can be used as a channel for creating a bioweapon? So that's the last question that I leave for you. And as I said, you have to think about your role into this world. And I hope that this presentation helped you a little bit with that. And don't worry, you got this. And if you want to contact me, you can go to my website. All my social media is there. And thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you, Clarissa.